More people sit and complain about the fact
Yeah.
that it's not happening when it's not gonna happen. You have to make it happen. Like, it's your job.
Welcome to the Lion Killer Podcast. I'm the writer, director, editor of the feature film Lion Killer. And today on the show, we have a very special guest. He is an award-winning animator and filmmaker. He's worked with Kevin Smith, Robert Rodriguez, and I believe Lloyd Kaufman.
Yeah.
The making of his first feature film, The Good Exorcist, was chronicled on the television show Rebel Without a Crew. Since then, he's gone on to make his second feature, Greywood's Plot, and I believe he has a third in the works entitled Scumbag. Welcome, Mr. Josh Stifter.
Hey, man, how's it going?
What's going on, man? You're busy, huh?
I'm busy. I'm always busy. There's always stuff to get done, even in this time of being stuck and trapped. I still somehow find way too much shit to try to do.
Funny story, man. I've seen The Good Exorcist. We were both screening. I was screening a short film at the Austin Revolution Film Festival a couple years back, and you were there. We met briefly in the hallway out there. But I believe you had a midnight screening. Was that correct?
Yeah, I did. We had that midnight screening with tequila shots or something like that.
See, that's the point. I wouldn't know. I planned to go, and I went into the wrong theater. I saw the wrong film. So I was like, oh, they're playing a short. You know how that film festival plays shorts before. And so the movie just keeps going on. And finally, we're in the 45 minutes. I'm like, I don't think we're in the
God. Yeah, that's one of the things about that festival is because it's in like a hotel and there's all these different rooms.
Yeah, right next to each other.
I never knew where to fucking go, ever. I always was like a lost puppy, just kind of walking around like, I guess I'll go in this room.
And it is, I want to give them a shout out. There's an Austin Revolution. They're an awesome festival. That was totally my bad. I went in the wrong screen. So when it did drop on El Rey Network, I made sure I watched it the day it dropped, and I loved it. So
sweet. I actually just found this yesterday. We're remodeling our upstairs, the kitchen and the bedrooms and stuff. And I found this underneath my dresser. It's the like belt buckle that they handed out at the Austin Revolution Film Festival. So
yeah, mine's right here. Well, here we go.
Hell yeah. That's amazing.
I didn't win one that year, but I went back the next year with Lion Killer and won. So
oh, sweet. Right on. Yeah, that was an awesome festival. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. If anybody's out there looking for a good festival, this is a lot of fun, a lot of good people.
Texas has some of the best festivals. I mean, Texas has some of the best people, but like the film festival and the film scene in Texas, primarily, I mean, I've mostly been in Austin and then Corpus, but like in those places, I always want to go back because there's just like this really respectful but passionate community.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, here in Houston, Austin, hadn't really been Corpus Christi. Where are you from? Where are you living now?
Minnesota. So the opposite side of the middle of the United States, but but I kind of felt like I oddly fit right in Texas. It was cool to go because Minnesota and Texas, while we're like polar opposites politically and often like personality wise, there's still like this weird respect that people have for each other in both places that, you know, you don't see so much on the coasts. And I
frontier land respect, you know.
Right? That's what it is.
So take me back a little bit. Let's get to know you, how you first got involved or interested in filmmaking, how that led to a career.
Man, I think all of us have sort of a similar story of like, we just had to. I just started like making movies as a kid. I couldn't stop myself from picking up a camera. If there was a like a photograph camera, like a picture camera, I would snap like 20 pictures that told a little story and then be excited to get it developed. Anything I could do to tell these little stories, making little stop motion animations with my dad's video camera that I had to steal from him because he didn't want me to break it. So I'd wake up on Sunday or Saturday morning super early and sneak it so I knew I could have it for the rest of the day and just pray to Christ he didn't find that I was using it. So then as I graduated high school, I had this moment where I was actually going to go into the seminary, believe it or not. As fucked up as I am, that was my plan, was to go into the seminary. And one day I woke up and it clicked in my head. I wanted to go make my stories. And which just makes me sound like an old grandma. Like, I'm watching my stories, leave me alone. But I just had these stories I had to tell. And so I started doing animation more and decided to go to college for animation, sort of take the Tim Burton route. That's sort of how Tim Burton or Mike Judge started doing
Yeah.
animations, then got into live action. So I'm like, well, it worked
There's
for them.
another Texas guy, Mike Judge, right?
Oh man, I love Mike Judge. And again, a great attitude. That dude just seems so cool. But I jumped on animation, got some really good jobs right out of college, just based on social media being at the right place at the right time. I would, tweet to Kevin Smith animations that I was doing, and he did this contest that I won and got working with him. From there, I got, just a job working in film and animation, and I've kind of lucked into it a little bit. It's like a mix of, everyone thinks that you luck into stuff or you have to work really hard. It's really a combination of both. And it's about, I think it was Michael Mann said in an interview with Robert Rodriguez, he's like, you just got to put your balls on the dashboard. To me, that was like the perfect analogy for what it feels like. You just got to like put yourself out there, put your balls on the dashboard, and hope to God that you don't get crushed. But I got lucky and it worked out, and I ended up on Rebel Without a Crew making my first feature. And from there, I've just kept making them. I love it. I got addicted to making stuff.
Now, how'd you get hooked up with El Rey Network? How'd that whole thing work out?
I made this cartoon that featured Michael Parks, who was in like From Dusk Till Dawn, and
you don't need to explain who Michael Parks is.
Such an awesome dude, and it was actually the last thing he did. He did a voice for a cartoon that me and my buddy Josh Roush did, and then Michael passed away, and I was like, you know what, this weird little cartoon we did, it's Michael's last performance. We need to get it out there to some people. So I sent it to El Rey Network just to see what they would think. And they were like, hey, we love it. We can't do anything with it. This is some weird artsy fartsy stuff that just doesn't play well on our network. However, you have this cartoon called Tim the Terrible that we really love, and we'd like to feature on El Rey Network if you'd be interested in selling it to us. So I was like, hell yeah. I mean, I wasn't doing anything with it, and I can make a couple bucks off of it. Why not? So I sent it to them, and they called me. They had me come out, and while I was there, I was talking to the showrunner about how obsessed with the book Rebel Without a Crew I was. And we started talking, and he told me about the show and asked me to apply, and turns out I was good for the show.
Now, I originally watched the show when it was on, was it Go 90? Was that the website? Yep. And I was actually in pre-production for my feature Lion Killer at that time. So it was an encouragement. Typically on the show, I'm interviewing people that were connected in the making of my first feature Lion Killer. And I want to open that up a little bit to filmmakers and creatives to talk more about their process. But really, watching you and your peers on that show go through what you went through was a huge encouragement. Still didn't prepare me for the nightmare of making a movie.
No, and man, the thing that I realized after I watched the show is there's no way to really express it in that form. Like, it's easier to talk about it and explain the feeling and how difficult it is than it is to actually show it. Because when you're watching it, time goes by really fast. What you don't see is those moments of just like sitting around going like, how the hell are we going to do this? Like, that's the part that's difficult. The hours of storyboarding or just even rereading lines and trying to get the dialogue right. All of that stuff. It's so hard to express in a television show. But it's been really cool hearing people. I've had a lot of people that I've talked to who watched the show as they were making their movie or as they were going into pre-production and got something out of it. And that's all I ever really wanted. I didn't want to be on reality TV. I have no fucking interest in being on reality TV. In fact, the 2 days before I was supposed to leave, I called Daniel, who plays Father Gil, and I was like, dude, we shouldn't do this. This is so stupid. Like, they're just going to make us look like the Real Housewives. This is going to be so dumb. And he's like, okay, but let's own that. Let's look dumb. Let's have fun. Let's be stupid. And we did. We just had a blast. We went on a dad vacation with Robert Rodriguez for, 2 months. And that it was the best time of my life because I let it be. And I'm really proud of the movie. It came out great. Like, I'm really happy with what I made considering the circumstances. But then I was able to take what I learned from that, and I kind of consider The Good Exorcist my student film, whereas Grey Woods is more of my first film or my first like personal project. And looking at it as like a first film is kind of difficult for me because I've done so much to get there. It's not like that's my first movie. I have all of these things that I'm working on. Hell, I started writing Scumbag before I ever even wrote The Good Exorcist. So it's all like a matter of just progressing and keeping on. But yeah, it's really, I love hearing that people watched it and at least gained a little something.
Oh yeah. Now the rules of the show, you had particular constraints. You had financial constraints, time constraints. Explain to our viewers what those were, and did you utilize those with going into Greywoods?
Yeah. So, oh yeah, I really pushed myself with Greywoods. Almost the opposite. So with Rebel, we had these rules of like we had to shoot in 14 days. We had to be on camera, so we still had to follow union rules because we were on the reality show. So with most independent movies, you could do whatever you want. You could do a 20-hour-a-day shoot. Like they're not going to stop you. Who's they? There's no one there to stop you from just continuing on. But with this, we could only do our 12-hour days, which really weren't 12-hour days because the reality crew had an hour setup and an hour breakdown that we couldn't be working. So there was all these constraints with time. Then we had to like rent our camera. We had to rent equipment. We had to rent lights. Independent filmmakers don't rent shit. We just buy it. We get what we need. We find, studio lights that we borrow from a friend. We do what we can to make it happen. We don't, go to a rental house and spend that mass price on it. Half of my budget went to renting crap that I never would have rented. I own a camera. But with that, I also learned not to spend money, and going into Greywoods, I was able to really like, oh man, I could pinch a penny. I tell you what, I was like we made that movie for nothing. I for anyone who hasn't seen it, spoiler alert, there's a pretty crazy mask at the end of the movie, like a monster mask that is used. And I had, asked people, like practical effects people, how we could get this thing made, like how much it would cost. And they were quoting me like $4,000, $6,000, like these ridiculous numbers to make a dog boy. And I was like, I'm not going to spend that. My budget is supposed to be like a couple grand. I basically wanted it to cost what it would cost to go on a vacation. I wanted this to be like my vacation. So me and my buddies just YouTube searched it and figured out how to make a mask. And we did it. We made it ourselves. And it cost us a couple $100 basically. So that was one of the things I learned from Greywoods or from The Good Exorcist is we had all the time in the world. We could learn how to do stuff. We weren't under those constraints of the 14 days. And that's my advice to anyone going out making a film is like, yeah, you might have your 8-day shoot or whatever you have, but don't be afraid to go shoot a little bit more later. Don't be afraid to, grab some pickups as you go. Make your movie as good as you can while you're editing. If you're like, God damn, I wish I'd got that shot. Go get it. Shoot it against a green screen and put it in later. Like figure out how to make the movie as best you can.
Make it happen, right?
It's all about making it happen. That's more people sit and complain about the fact that it's not happening when it's not going to happen. You have to make it happen. Like it's your job.
Now you went to animation school, not necessarily film school, but was there some overlap between you and the filmmakers in school? I asked that because when I went to film school, I was confused with how many people were filmmakers, but they had nothing to show for it. I'm a filmmaker. I've got a card. I've got a website. I've got a Facebook, but I have no films.
Right. It's hilarious, that dichotomy, because there is this weird, like half of the filmmakers have never made a film. Half of the people who have made a film refuse to call themselves filmmakers. And and then there's this middle spot of people who actually are doing it properly. And I've made 2 features at this point. I've made 3 documentaries, 100 animations, and I still struggle to call myself a filmmaker. Like, it's so challenging to like push that into my brain. But you're 100% right that there is this like group of people who's like, I'm a filmmaker. You're like, oh man, can I see your film? They're like, oh, I haven't made it yet.
It's all up here. I get a lot of that. It's all up here. Can I read your script? It's all up here. No, I'm just trying to
get a budget. That's what everyone says. I can't get the budget. I'm like, come on, man. I've got dog monsters. I've got tree monsters. I've got a priest that gets sent to hell. And I did it all for under 10 grand. Like I made 2 movies for under 10 grand. So come on.
It becomes this weird thing where people are using whether it's budget or whatever, as an excuse not to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And most of that, I don't even think, I think it's honestly a fear of failure. It's
Absolutely.
a fear that it's not going to come out flawless. And that's just
it
not
won't come out. It won't come out flawless. It'll be flawed. It'll be a movie.
$250 million movies are flawed. Like, it's the money, the budget, the time, none of that matters in a movie. It's all art. So you gotta go into it and just make it.
In Goodfellas, isn't there a camera bump in the movie
yeah.
that stayed in the movie?
Right. I think there's like, my son and I were watching E.T., which is considered an utter classic. And as they're riding their bikes away on I have this big screen TV in my bedroom, and my kid and I were watching E.T. in my bedroom, and we're both like, Elliot just fell down. And we rewound it, and there's like a blooper where the dude who plays Elliot is coming around the corner on his bike, and his bike just tips over. Like, that made it into one of the most massive movies of all time.
Now, the budget for The Good Exorcist was $7,000, right? That was the financial constraint with that one. What was your budget?
I mean,
what was your budget on the Greywoods?
$7,000 is sort of a fake number, though, like, because it's, if you pay your crew, like, I might have spent more if I was doing it myself, or I might have spent less if I paid my cast each, I think, $250. Because I didn't have a budget that I could pay them more than that. And, they were all happy to do it. They would have done it for free, but I wanted to give them gas money and lunch money or whatever. So I paid them a little bit. But on Greywoods, I didn't pay anyone anything. Like, most of our money went to booze. I put that in the budget, all of the booze we bought for the shoot. I had to rent a hotel room once, gas money. So I think the budget of this one of Greywoods was about $3,000, but it's also it's a made up number, because when do you end that budget versus when do you start it when you're dealing with your friends,
Plus, no one ever adds in film festival submissions and going to festivals and eating and living.
Dude, seriously, that was the most expensive part, was going to the film festivals, having to buy my plane ticket, having to get a hotel room, having to buy food, like all of that stuff. That's, each time I did it, you're spending $600-700 on everything when all is said and done. Easy. That's more than the cost of the movie.
So let's get into what you learned from Greywoods.
Greywoods was really different, because with The Good Exorcist, I was kind of tossed in to make my cast and crew based on the reality show. I had to, cast people on the spot. I didn't actually have a crew per se. It was just supposed to be me. And so it was Daniel and I trying to figure out how to do this movie, and the people who were in the movie helping out. With Greywoods, it was the opposite, where I cast around my friends. It was just me, Keith, Daniel, and Strauss, like me and my 3 best buds. And so they didn't know anything about filmmaking when we started. They were totally ignorant to it. But by the end, I had learned, like, we were a crew. It was crazy, because when we first started, those guys didn't know how to set up 3-point light. They didn't know how to run a camera. They didn't know how to focus. They didn't know how a dolly worked. They didn't know how to run audio equipment. They didn't know anything, literally nothing. Daniel kind of knew how to run a camera and understood the concept of how to run audio. But other than that, none of them knew. So, a few years later, after we went and we had filmed it again, we had gone back, we had done everything we needed to do. We had one of the last days of shooting was actually on my birthday. And instead of having a birthday party, I invited all of my friends to come out to the woods and bring zombie makeup. Go buy like $15 in zombie makeup and come out to the woods. I'm going to make you guys into tree monsters. They all came out for my birthday, and we started to film it. And as we were filming it with these people who had never been on a movie set before, they had no idea what they were doing. I realized, like, me, Keith, Daniel, and Strauss were like the best film crew I've ever worked with, because we knew how to talk to each other. We had done it together, and we were best friends. So it was easy to be like, dudes, I need 3-point lighting, and we really need to bounce it off that back tree. And Daniel, if you could get the fog going from screen left, because I want it to be blown with the wind right now. Like, everyone just knew exactly what I was saying. I didn't have to sugarcoat it. I didn't have to be, tame with them. I could just boss them around like a director who feels comfortable with the people who aren't going to take it personally. And we totally just, like, we were copacetic. We synced up, and it was awesome.
What did you do? What were your responsibilities on set?
Same, man. That's why when I was watching Lion Killer, I was just like, I can see that this is like I can see when a movie is a one-man show of passion. Yes, there are lots of other people working on it, and we gotta respect them, and we love them, and I'm the first one to give credit to Daniel and Keith and Strauss before myself, even though I spent, I'll admit, I spent 80 times the amount of time on the movie as anyone else did. I couldn't do it without them.
Absolutely.
But
it's true. It's true. When everybody's at the bar, you're behind a computer screen. And editing on and on and on.
Rewatching the same scene over and over again, trying to make it better, listening to the audio, setting up a 5.1. I set up like a 5.1 surround in my basement just so I could see what it's like, learn 5.1. Watching YouTube video after YouTube video of how to do 5.1, learning my technique for it. Visual effects. I did almost all of the visual effects myself, but some of the visual effects were by other people who did killer jobs, and I'll shout them out, but they did 2 shots, as opposed to there's almost not a shot in Greywood's plot that doesn't have a visual effect in it, whether it's adding dust into the air or light in the background or a screen or something. Every shot has a visual effect. So that's 1,000 visual effects in that movie that most of them people don't notice or don't care about. But for me,
it takes hours to do.
Yeah, and I love them. I love that about it. Those little things that people don't notice, replacing skies, replacing trees, things like that. And so, I did pretty much everything on that movie, and I think it shows, as it does with Lion Killer and other movies that I've seen now that I've been thrown into this world of like truly no budget movies. I'm seeing how important, which I consider anything under, anything that's not coming from a producer or coming from a big studio house. We're all no budget movies. We got to use shoestrings and duct tape to make these movies and long nights of figuring it out. So, but yeah, I sort of learned how to do a lot on these 2 movies and basically did everything myself.
So yeah, same thing with Lion Killer. The crew we had, I couldn't have done it without them. But at the same time, I don't think anyone on the sets realize when you're the guy, when you're the director, when you're the visionary behind the whole thing, how labor intensive it actually is.
Yeah. And I think that's okay. Because we're not doing it for them. We're doing it for us. And the fact that they're coming along for the ride means a lot. And I think that's one thing that happens on a lot of these. There's a pretentious word, but in auteur film, where it is your baby, it's your thing.
My vision.
Yeah, I mean it is, and that's the problem. Is like we're not making something necessarily pretentious or trying to be pretentious about it, but we have to really think about it as this is mine. I have to own this, or you're just going to crap it out. It's just going to be like, yeah, I just fucking made this thing. And you don't want it to be that. You want it to be that thing where you're like, I made this thing. I'm proud of it. I'm going to do a podcast about it because I love it that much. Or I'm going to do the long hours of trying to get it into festivals. Or I'm going to think like until my brain feels like I'm like beautiful minding, writing things on paper all over the walls, going, how am I going to distribute this movie? Those moments are why we do it, because we love doing it that much.
You're basically trying to do the impossible. You're trying to birth this thing out of nothing, get a team of people who believe in you and will work with you, and then put it out to the world and have people appreciate it.
Right.
So it's definitely a figuring that whole process out, starting at zero and then figuring that whole thing out is definitely a huge part of the interest for me. Now, let me ask you a technical question. So The Good Exorcist, of course, was in color. Greywood's plot, I watched it last night. Great film. It's shot in black and white. Was that purely from a technical standpoint? You didn't want to have to deal with color temperature, or was that artistic?
The funny thing about black and white is it's more difficult to color correct than color, because you have so much more control. You're often like messing with color temperature in crazy ways, and if the contrast and the tone doesn't match shot to shot, it's so much more apparent in black and white. Like it just pops if it doesn't match. If one is more faded and one is more like contrasty, it just feels off. So I actually spent more time color correcting Greywood's plot than The Good Exorcist.
That's interesting.
But so when we first started filming Greywood's plot, the intention was to be in color, and that was before we filmed The Good Exorcist. So we shot it in color, and then when I came back after The Good Exorcist and I had done that whole process, a year had passed, and that's a year of making another movie, having kids. Daniel and I both had 2 boys. So we were both raising kids, and like you could see it on our faces. Like when we went back to film, it was like, oh, we went from being like those kids out in the woods filming a movie to being dads with bags under our eyes. And one of the things we talked about is like, well, how can we get away from it using color? Like, can we still use these shots if we give it a stylized look? Because we still wanted to use those shots. We had some great footage already. And it was like, damn, if we can't use that, that's going to be really crappy. And then I started writing the script and I sent it to Daniel. And because when we originally filmed, we had just used an outline. We didn't actually have a full script. We used like a scriptment, scene by scene. We had 42 note cards that we were going.
I'm considering that for my next film. Would you recommend it? It
didn't work for me on my first try, but I
that's a no.
But with that being said, in theory, it did work for me. We got some great shots, and we ended up finishing a film because we started that way. Now, we had to adapt because we were young. We didn't know what we were doing. We were still figuring it out. I think now that we've learned to act a little better, we've sort of figured out the process, I think in theory it could work. But it's challenging. It's really hard to think on the fly like that and come up with concepts really quickly. But so then when we were sitting down and talking about the script, I kept comparing it to other movies. When I was talking to Daniel, I'm like, so right here, I think we're going to have a really Frankenstein-y vibe, or we're going to have a real Terror is a Man vibe, or an Island of Dr. Moreau vibe, or Ed Wood vibe. Like we're going to get really cheesy right here and go really Ed Wood when we get to the monsters in the woods. I want to feel like that stolen footage that Ed Wood would do. And Daniel's like, all of these movies are black and white movies. I'm like, oh shit, we're making a black and white movie. All right, we're making a black and white movie. And we started looking at the footage and seeing how good it looked black and white, the stuff we already had.
It did, yeah.
And then when we went back to film it the second time, we shot it in color, but just in case, but we used a black and white monitor. So we were always seeing the movie in black and white, and it just became the way the movie had to be. And it actually like pushed us to think visually in black and white. Like as we did some of these monsters, we're like, well, how will it look cool in black and white versus in color? You know, how can we use blood and make it really dark and nasty, but still feel red? Like, how can we get that feeling, that tone of red in the blood? So we did stuff just to mess with the black and white. And I think it worked out in the end to keep it black and white. The other thing it did was it instantly made it feel kind of dreamy. Like it felt uneasy, and I think that allowed us to get really weird with the movie because it was in black and white, where people just can disconnect from the reality of what they're seeing and go like, yeah, I mean, in this world, he's got a Venus flytrap that he gives a fly to. Like, that's just how this world is.
I was wondering about that shot. When I saw that shot, I was like, I wonder if that's stock footage. No way this guy went out and bought a Venus flytrap.
So it's interesting. It's a combination of stock footage and an actual Venus flytrap that I filmed. I actually composited different elements from a real Venus flytrap and a fake Venus flytrap, and then this shot of a fly that I composited multiple times. And then the sound design really sells it, because that sound design of the crunch just makes you go like, oh, that fly's dead. But it's a composite of like 3 different things. There's a lot of like compositing different elements together using stock footage, real footage, and stuff like that I could purchase for relatively cheap. That's the thing. Stock footage now, if you need a shot and you're like, originally I was going to do the Venus flytrap as stop motion, and I actually did it. I should post that somewhere, because I did the stop motion Venus flytrap, and it looked cool, but it was too Tim Burton-y. It pulled you out a little too much. And with the whole theme of flies through the whole movie, I really wanted that moment. So I'm like, well, I could cut the Venus flytrap, or I could find a way to make it. So it's a combination of, visual effects, stop motion, and there's like even a little 3D to the fly that I had to do in post to try to get it to like match with the trap clamping down on it. So
it's like Kevin Smith when he would do Q&As for Clerks. You make this movie, you work hard on it, and all people want to know is how'd you get the cat to take a crap in the litter box?
Yes, exactly.
It's like, how'd you get the Venus flytrap?
Yeah, or yeah, I don't mind that though. I love it. I love when people watch it and there's little details that they like, and everyone has that little moment that they like. The last interview I did, the dude was asking all about the suicide video at the beginning, and that's fascinating to me that captured his imagination. You know, in a movie that's got dog boys and bat monsters and tree creatures and animated murderous hobo, you know, killers and like all the crazy stuff that happens. The suicide video was the thing that captured his imagination. I like that because it's like I put a lot of work into that, and that's actually Super 8 footage that I filmed a couple of years ago. I bought a roll of Super 8 and was just like, screw it, I'm going to try this. I want to see what it's like to use Super 8, and I got to put it into my feature film. So
now you also work real hard on the animation. Now you had animation, little vignettes in the Good Exorcist as well as in Greywood's Plot. Is that going to be something that is going to be part of your aesthetic going forward?
It's really hard to see me doing something without animation in it. I love animation, even if it's credit sequences or, you know, just some animation somewhere in everything I do. It would be really, really hard for me to see doing a movie without it. But I mean, honestly, I think my movies just in general have this sort of living cartoon tone at times where it just isn't meant to be taken all that seriously. They're in this like alternate universe where people are sort of caricatures and cartoons. So, you know, embracing that and putting the animation in, number one, it's always fun for me. Plus, one of the things I really like about animation in movies is it seems to pull the audience out of the movie for a second and makes them go like, oh, that's cool. So that they're not getting so sucked in that they're like, well, that would never happen in reality. It's like, well, yeah, you're watching a movie. It's okay not to see reality. And that's just my aesthetic. That's the way my movies are. I like to pull people out of it a little bit and keep it weird. So in Scumbag, I've actually written a couple of animated sequences as well. And hopefully they work. The Scumbag's a weird movie, so we'll see what happens. That's coming from the guy who made Greywood's Plot and The Good Exorcist. It's going to be a trip.
So I was going to ask you a little bit about Scumbag. So you have 2 micro budget features done and completed. You're working. Where are you at with Scumbag? And you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Scumbag's an interesting movie. I wrote it about a year ago. I had this idea when even before I was on Rebel Without a Crew, where I was like, what's a real Rebel Without a Crew movie? Like, what is that? I mean, Rebel Without a Crew is cool, but he has a crew. His cast is his crew. His, you know, the people in the town were his crew. He found people. That's a general statement. A real Rebel Without a Crew movie, you make it by yourself. It's one person making a movie. Like, that's the Rebel Without a Crew movie. So this idea was burning in my brain for like years. Like, is it possible to make a movie by yourself? And I'd like lay in bed at night. I'd think about, yeah, I mean, if you set up monitors, you used autofocus. I did 10 scenes of Greywood's Plot by myself. Like the scene where he's doing the suicide or the attempted suicide in the bathroom. I filmed that by myself on a Sunday night. Like that was just me. And then I added my mom's voice in post, like just ADR'd it, which that actually is my mom in the movie, by the way. I just wanted to put my mom in a movie and make her call me a mistake. That was like the dream. And make her say shit razor blades. But so I had this concept of like, could I make a movie literally by myself? I did a short film called Stalking by myself, all about a Christmas stocking that eats me. And I was like, could I do that as a feature film? So I started writing Scumbag in September of last year. I finished it, and it took me about a month to write it. And I was thinking about it the whole time. How could I have monsters? How could I have like cool things? And I'm the lead character in the like I would be the star of the movie, and I'd have to film myself. And it became this movie about a guy in a bunker, like post-apocalyptic, sort of Omega Man-ish. And I set up monitors in my basement so I could film myself. I could always see myself at every angle. I have a GoPro as like the fly on the wall filming it, and it's a pretty good script. So I sent it to a couple people, and I was like, I don't want you to give me actual advice on how to make this because I want to make it entirely myself. I just want to send it to someone to read. So I sent it to Daniel, and and then like a week later, he's like, hey man, we got to meet for dinner. So we went out for dinner, and he's like, don't do it, man. Don't do it by yourself. This movie's too good. We can improve it. We can make it better. We can get a budget, and we can make this movie. This is like your first movie. This is such a cool idea. I was like, God damn it. I shouldn't have sent it. But we talked about it. And he convinced me like, okay, we'll rewrite it a little bit. And we'll get a budget and we'll make this like as an actual movie. And then COVID hit, and I got that.
Everything.
It changes everything. And I got that call from Daniel, and I had actually filmed the first sequence already. I grew my fingernails out like 2 inches long. I grew my hair out for the first sequence of the movie, and I filmed it. And then I sent it to Daniel, and he told me, don't do it. I'm like, dude, I grew my fingernails out for 6 months for this movie. Like, I'm going to film it, but he convinced me. So then anyway, COVID hit, and Daniel called me again and was like, dude, just make it. He's like, I can't believe how you predicted the future. Like, there is toilet paper jokes in the movie. There are jokes about the masks that people would wear. There's jokes about the virus. There's things about the virus that are actually coming true that I talked about in the script. It was like I had predicted this weird, messed up alternate version of what this could become. And now I have to make it. So I've been making it over the past few months, really trying to just slowly make it scene by scene. And it's coming out really great. But it's a one-man movie. I'm doing it literally by myself in my basement. I turned my basement into a bunker. I bought a gas mask. I started making these mutant costumes that I'm going to be wearing myself. I have this little hand puppet thing that gives me like an Evil Dead sequence of fighting with myself. So, yeah.
Talk about micro-budget filmmaking. I mean,
the coincidence is this movie is probably going to cost me more than either of the two movies, because I had to buy equipment to be able to film myself. Like, I had to buy adapters to hook up to multiple monitors. I had to buy a few, like, I bought this slider or track that actually it's automatic. Like, you set the timer on your phone and then the track moves on it, so I can have constant motion from the camera while acting in front of the camera. And
you're not just setting up 4 cameras, hitting record, and then
no, I'm actually like storyboarding it, thinking through the shots, and really trying to make it work. And the first sequence I have edited, I have put together, and I'm really, really happy with it. Like, it's coming out great. And some of the other stuff is looking fantastic, but it's just about, working inside those boundaries and finding ways to make it work. And through the whole movie, I wear a gas mask, which really helps, because then I'm able to add ADR later. I'm able to figure out the story as I go and go like, oh my God, this is like a 2-minute sequence where I say nothing. Like, I need to be talking to myself or do something here. So, I mean, it's sort of a improv movie in a way, but it's also, it is what it is. And I my hope is that it comes out decent and people dig it, and then we're able to go make a real version of it, like a big budget version where I can cast an actor to play Scumbag, and I can get, a actual visual effects or special effects person to make the monsters and stuff like that, instead of learning to make it myself.
What's in the future for you? What are you looking for?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like I'm very much a adapt as you go type of person. I would never, if right now someone called me up and they were like, hey man, we want you to do the next Jurassic Park, it's not like I would go, no way, I'm way too indie for that.
I'm keeping it real.
Yeah, I would be thinking about it, obviously. Like, you're not going to not. But for me, like, the thing is, I had these 3 ideas for micro budget movies, and I feel like it's sort of my actual film school, my trilogy of learning. And, after that, who knows? Daniel and I are taking this time during quarantine to write. Like, we're writing scripts like crazy. We're just thinking about, okay, what are the 5 movies that we've always dreamt of doing? Let's write those. What's something that, if it could be adapted into a Goosebumps movie or a Shudder movie or a whatever, what's that script? What's the movie that's
Blumhouse
like,
or something.
yeah, what's the movie that could, if they're like, hey, we want you to check, we like this script, we like the general outline, but we want it to fit into this mold. What's that movie? It's essentially kind of like doing a spec script that doesn't have to be forced into a specific thing. Like, I'm not making a Alvin and the Chipmunks movie. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going like, these are the characters and this is all they'll ever be. You can't take an Alvin and the Chipmunks movie and turn it into a monster movie. It's just not going to work. So it's like, okay, what if we write the monster movie or the haunted house movie that in theory, it could be an R-rated movie. If you change it a little bit, it could be a PG-13 movie. Or if you change it a little bit more, it could be a Goosebumps movie. Like, it could be anything.
Yeah.
So we're kind of thinking about that and trying to write a lot right now.
It's smart, that's putting your business cap on.
At a certain point, you have to be that. You have to put that business hat on. Like with The Good Exorcist, the business hat was put on to me because it was Rebel Without a Crew. It was like it was going to be what it was going to be. And thank God I got the rights back. I was able to get it on Troma. I was able to put it on Amazon Prime, all this other stuff. But with Greywood's plot, it was very much okay, let's not put on the business cap. Let's literally think about what's the project that no one is ever going to give us the money to do. No one's ever going to be like, we want you to make this comedy horror that then turns into a body horror. And it's basically Cronenberg meets David Lynch. Like, if I tried to pitch that in a studio, they'd be like, get out. Get out. But, you know, we've done that movie. Now let's do the gimmick movie. I want to do the gimmick movie of one guy makes a movie by himself in his basement. If the movie comes out good, awesome, great. But at the end of the day, the movie has the gimmick that a handful of people will watch and go, oh, wow, he actually did that. And it looked like something. Like, it wasn't what I expect one man in his basement to make a movie look like. And so that's all that one has to be. The next one, it's got to be our business movie. It's got to be the movie that people go, oh, he knows how to take this much money, like a chunk of money, and make it make more money than that. And that's about placating to an audience, finding your audience, knowing what your audience is in advance. So far, Greywood's plot hasn't even released. The Good Exorcist was in, this hell of dealing with who owned the rights, where it was. But I've already profited off of both of those movies. There's a lot of movies that don't make a profit.
Absolutely.
So if I made a couple grand off of them, I made a couple grand off of something that I'm happy to have made. But, the hope is I make more, but you just gotta go with the punches. And that's why the next project after Scumbag, I would love to do something that I'd love to have $100K to make a movie that I can still work on my own thing. I can do my own thing, say what I want to say, but also prove I can make $500K off of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the most important things is you're staying creative. You're keeping that creative muscle. It's not an atrophy. You're keeping it moving, and that builds.
I have a lot of people during this pandemic messaging me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and they're just like, dude, I'm so lost. I don't know what I should be doing. I'm like, man, I'm making a Good Exorcist comic right now, and I'm filming a movie in my basement by myself, and I'm, writing 5 scripts right now, and I'm compartmentalizing them. I'm going like, you know what? This week I'm going to focus on the comic. That's it. I'm just going to do as much of the comic as I can.
Same here.
And you have to do that.
Yeah.
What happens is we get all these ideas, and then we're like, I got to get them all done, and I've only got 3 months until COVID is over. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, that's the stupidest way to think. Instead, take a week. Take a week and work on that one thing you always wanted to do. And if it doesn't get done, that's fine. Set it aside for the next week and work on something else. And what happens is people are getting depressed. They're getting like in their head and getting lost instead of taking this time to just go like, how much can I do in these 2 days? How much can I do on this project? You can't get like depressed and scared and try to do everything you ever wanted to do during this. But that's like so not the way to think. Instead, think about what's that one thing I can finish today.
So that kind of leads into the last question before I let you go. I know you got to get out of here, but what were the lessons learned from making your micro budget films?
So my thing I would say for years was like, just go start making it, just start doing it. But the thing I've really learned in the past like 6 months is be honest with yourself. Like, stop thinking about what other people did. Stop comparing. We live in this social media era where everyone is like, oh my God, this guy went and did this, or this gal made this movie, or everyone is just comparing themselves to other people. The Duplass brothers made their career doing this, or whatever. Everyone has their own path, and you got to be so self-aware and honest with yourself of what your path needs to be and what your skills are, because you might want to go out there and make an action movie. You watched El Mariachi and you're like, I want to make an action movie just like Robert made. I want to have people running. I don't really like action movies, but I want to do what he did. That sounds fun. Do you really want to do it though? Maybe you like horror more and you want to do horror. You know what? Maybe you're just fucking a romantic and you should go make a romance movie. Like, do what you can do, what you honestly will care about 10 years from now still. Because when you make your movie, that year that you spend making it, that's like the tip of the iceberg. You've got your rest of your life to live with that movie. So make that thing that 5 years from now, you're still going to be like, yeah, I made that. I see the flaws. I know what it is, but I made that. I'm proud of it.
Absolutely. And that's definitely what I did. And that's good advice. Know yourself.
I can see that in the movie, in Lion Killer. The topic, the subject matter was really important to you. And that shows. I see a lot of these movies where the topic isn't important to the person that made the movie.
They needed a theme to make it gel, and so at random they pulled a theme out.
Yeah, they like the genre. They're like, you know what? I like action, or I like drama, or I like horror, or even they put their business cap on and they're like, you know what'll sell? Horror now. It's huge. Horror will sell, but they don't even watch horror movies. They don't get it. They don't care. Whereas going into The Good Exorcist, I'm like, I grew up in, thinking I was going to be a minister. I really like goofy demons. I like Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I like things like that. I'm going to make like a monster Pee-wee movie that's just funny. And I know Daniel and I are going to get on set and just goof around. So let's just make a movie where we can goof around and it's okay. And I think that's what resonates with people. They feel like they're on set with us while they watch the movie. They're like, oh my God, they just made this shitty Bible monster and Daniel's rolling around the room with a puking teddy bear. You can all but see me on the other side of that teddy bear, blowing in the tube to get the puke to launch in his face. Like you feel it right in the movie. And
people love that. People love that.
They do. They really do. They love when they can see the artist in the film. And while yours isn't like The Good Exorcist, I can see the artist in the film and it instantly it sucks me in because that passion that's in it. So I think everyone needs to kind of take something from that. If you're going to make a movie, fucking love the thing you're writing about.
Absolutely. Because there's no guarantee where you're going to end up. There's no guarantees. If you're going to do something you love.
Dude, there's also that where people do that first. You got to know how much work it's going to be. They make that first thing and then they just don't have the drive to continue because it fucking kills you. It crushes you. And it's a long game. When you put out a movie and you're like, I guess I'll just put it out on Amazon Prime and people will see it, and hope that people will see it. But it's kind of just out there. It can be like disheartening. It can kill you, but you got to watch the little successes. When someone tells you they like it, when someone, just even knowing someone was out there watching it can be huge. And like, you have to take that as inspiration to keep going. But yeah, I mean, being on that, I was on the Alita set and like being on that Alita set and going, wow, this dude was in Mexico shooting a movie for $7,000 25 years ago. And now we're standing in this $7 million set. Like nothing has ever felt more possible than that moment. Like Robert is a human being. I've talked to him many, many times.
I don't know. He seems bigger than a human to me.
Oh, he's just a dude, man. You sit and have a conversation with him, and yeah, he's super smart. He's a brilliant dude and just an amazing filmmaker. But he's also, I mean, he'll talk about how he sets up lights, and he'll talk about making pizzas, and he'll talk about whatever. He's still a guy, and you just got to understand, like, yes, it's larger than life. The story of Robert he's a legend, he's a myth. But any of us could be that myth with the right circumstance, the right amount of luck, and the right amount of work.
Well, I don't think we could end on a better note than that, man. I appreciate your time. And you want to give a shout out where people can watch your film?
Yeah, so Greywood's plot is we're going to do a screening where people can buy tickets on May 31st. I don't know if this will be out before then, but May 31st, we're going to do a screening that if you go to joshstifter.com, you can find. It's not up as of right now, it's not up, but it'll be up soon. We're dropping a new trailer for Greywoods. We're going to do the screening with a live Q&A on May 31st, and then the movie will be out hopefully in July. I'm shooting for like a July 4th weekend release. Like, the least when I was a kid, like every July 4th was like the weekend for like Independence Day, Mission Impossible, like all the blockbusters came out on the 4th of July weekend. So I want to release my $2,000 movie on the 4th of July. So we're going to release that hopefully. And then The Good Exorcist is available on Amazon Prime, Troma Now, should be out on Tubi TV pretty soon. It's all over the place. And patreon.com/Flush Studios if you want to help support indie filmmaking. That's how you can help support my endeavor of making movies. Any subscriptions go towards, buying equipment, keeping my websites running, all of that stuff. So that's it.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate your time, man. I'll catch up with you.
I love it.